The alarm bells rang through the Galactic Council's main headquarters on Centauri Prime. Red lights flashed everywhere as panicked voices filled the communication channels. Something terrible was happening at the edge of known space. Admiral Vel rushed into the command center, his blue skin turning pale as he saw the horrifying reports flooding in. Entire star systems were going dark. Not destroyed, just gone, as if they never existed. "What are we dealing with?" he asked the tactical officer. "Unknown entities, sir. They're massive. Each one is the size of a small moon. They're eating everything in their path. Planets, stars, even space stations." On the main screen, grainy footage showed something that made everyone's blood run cold. Dark creatures moved through space like living shadows, their bodies seeming to absorb light itself. When they touched the planet, it simply vanished, consumed in seconds. "Deploy the Fifth Fleet," Velthar ordered. "Full plasma cannon barrage." The footage from the battle made him sick. Their most powerful weapons, plasma beams that could crack planets, hit the creatures and just made them glow brighter. The energy didn't hurt them, it fed them. "Sir, the Fifth Fleet is gone," reported the communications officer, her voice shaking. "All ships consumed." Velthor slumped in his chair. In 300 years of galactic peace, nothing had prepared them for this. These weren't ordinary enemies they could negotiate with or understand. They were like a force of nature, hungry, unstoppable, and heading straight for the core worlds. "How long before they reach the inner systems?" he asked quietly. "At their current speed." "Maybe 6 months, sir. 6 months before billions of innocent lives would be wiped out. 6 months before their entire civilization would end. Send emergency signals to every world in the galaxy," Velthar commanded, his voice heavy with desperation. "Tell them what we're facing. Ask for any help, any ideas, anything at all." He paused, staring at the spreading darkness on the tactical display. "And send it to the quarantine zones too. Even the Deathworlds. At this point, we'll take help from anyone willing to give it." The communication officer looked surprised. "Sir, you mean contact the primitive worlds? The ones we deemed too dangerous?" Velthar nodded grimly. "When facing the end of everything, maybe we need someone who knows how to survive the impossible." The distress signal began broadcasting across the galaxy, carrying one simple message. "Help us, please." Ambassador Crix sat in the corner of the emergency council meeting, quietly flipping through old exploration reports on his tablet. While other council members argued about evacuation plans and defense strategies, something nagged at his memory. "We should focus our remaining fleets on protecting the core worlds," insisted Chancellor Mordok. "Sacrifice the outer colonies to buy time." "And then what?" snapped Admiral Velthar. "Watch as those things eat the core worlds too." Crix stopped scrolling. There it was, the file he remembered. Classification, Deathworld. Class 12. Location, Sector 7, Sol System, 3rd planet. Status, quarantined, do not contact. He opened the detailed report, and his eyes widened. The planet called Earth was listed as one of the most dangerous worlds ever discovered. The surface temperature swung from freezing cold to burning hot. Massive storms could flatten entire cities. The oceans were filled with predators that could swallow starships whole. But the most shocking part was the lifeform analysis. Humans. Somehow, impossibly, they had not only survived on this nightmare planet, they had thrived. Their bodies produced their own antifreeze proteins. Crix read quietly. They can survive in environments that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Their healing factor allows them to recover from injuries that would be fatal to others. The report continued with details that seemed almost unbelievable. Humans regularly climbed mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. They voluntarily jumped from aircraft thousands of feet in the air for fun. They kept dangerous predators as pets in their homes. Ambassador Crix, do you have any input? Admiral Velther's voice cut through his reading. Crix looked up at the desperate faces around the table. Every conventional weapon had failed. Every strategy had crumbled. They were out of options. There's a species we've never contacted, he said slowly. We classified their world as too dangerous to visit. Another warrior race? Asked Chancellor Mordock with interest. Not exactly. They're not warriors by choice. They're survivors by necessity. Their planet tries to kill them every single day, and they just ... Abacked, Crix stood up and projected Earth's file onto the main screen. The council members stared at the blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful. Contact the Deathworlders, he said, his voice growing stronger. What do we have to lose? Maybe someone who learned to survive the impossible can teach us how to fight the unstoppable. The room fell silent as everyone considered this desperate gamble. Captain Lee Ginho was enjoying his morning coffee in the observation deck when the priority transmission came through. The bridge officer's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent but professional. Captain, we're receiving an emergency broadcast from the Galactic Council. It's marked as highest priority. Ginho set down his cup and headed to the bridge of the U.S. Defiant. His crew was already gathered around the communications station. Watching the holographic message from Ambassador Crix, the alien diplomat looked exhausted as he explained the situation. Massive creatures were devouring entire star systems. Energy weapons made them stronger. Entire fleets had been consumed. The galaxy was crying for help. Well, that's not good, muttered Lieutenant Park Sunho from the weapons station. Energy entities, repeated Chief Engineer Kim Nari, scratching her chin thoughtfully. So plasma, lasers, ion beams, all of that just feeds them. Apparently, Jinho replied, studying the tactical data the council had included. Look at this footage. The crew watched grainy videos of enormous shadow creatures shrugging off weapons that could destroy planets. Every energy blast seemed to make them grow larger and move faster. Captain, said Pilot Officer Choi Minho, the other human ships are receiving this too. I'm getting requests for video conferences from the Indomitable, the Resilient, and the Endeavor. Put them through, within minutes. Captains from across the human fleet were discussing the situation. While the alien transmission had been filled with panic and desperation, the human response was remarkably different. So they absorb energy, said Captain Yoon Hana from the Resilient. That's actually helpful information. Right? Agreed Captain Seo Dong-wook from the Endeavor. At least we know what doesn't work. Jinho looked at his tactical display, running quick calculations. If energy feeds them, then we need to think kinetic, old-school physics. Asked Lieutenant Park, getting excited. Exactly. Magnetic acceleration, tungsten rounds, purely kinetic impact. No energy for them to absorb. Chief Kim nodded approvingly. We've got those experimental mass drivers too. And the nuclear warheads. Work through physical explosion, not energy beams. Jinho smiled for the first time since receiving the transmission. While the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were paralyzed by fear, humans saw this as just another engineering challenge. Ready the railguns, he ordered calmly, his crew already moving to battle stations. If they want to eat energy, we'll feed them metal instead. Let's show these things what happens when you threaten Earth's neighbors. The Defiant changed course toward the crisis zone, followed by the growing human fleet. Commander Park Minji's fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the Galactic Council's staging area, and immediately every alien sensor operator started sending panicked reports to their superiors. Sir, the human ships, ... Their weapon signatures are all wrong, stammered a young Zentarian officer to Admiral Velthor. What do you mean wrong? They're not carrying plasma cannons or ion beams. Their weapons are ... mechanical, physical projectile systems. And sir, they have nuclear devices. Admiral Velthor nearly choked on his drink. Nuclear weapons. Those haven't been used in civilized warfare for thousands of years. The human fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, each one bristling with strange-looking weapons that seemed almost ancient by galactic standards. Massive rail systems ran along their hulls, and what looked like simple missile tubes dotted their surfaces. Commander Park Minji requested permission to dock and brief the council leadership. When she walked into the briefing room, her casual confidence seemed out of place among the panicking alien commanders. "Commander Park," began Admiral Velthor nervously, "we've reviewed your weapon systems, and frankly, we're concerned. These appear to be very primitive technologies." Park smiled and activated a holographic display showing her fleet's armaments. "Let me introduce you to our kinetic cannons. They fire tungsten penetrators at 30,000 meters per second. No energy signature, no fancy plasma, just good, old-fashioned physics." The alien officers looked horrified as she continued. "We also brought nuclear warheads, conventional explosives, and these beauties." She pointed to massive railguns, magnetic acceleration systems that can punch holes through asteroids. "But Commander," interrupted Chancellor Mordock, "surely your civilization has developed more advanced energy-based weapons." "We tried those," Park replied casually. "But you know what we learned growing up on Earth? Sometimes simple works better. When a bear is charging at you, you don't need a sophisticated laser. You need something that hits hard and stops it cold." She gestured to her weapon display again. "On Earth, everything tries to kill you. The weather, the animals, even the plants. We didn't have the luxury of elegant solutions. We learned to kill back efficiently and permanently." The room fell, silent as the implications sank in. While other species had spent millennia perfecting energy weapons, humans had been forced to master the raw, brutal physics of destruction. "You call these primitive?" Park asked, watching her ships load fresh tungsten penetrators through the viewport. "Maybe, but primitive doesn't mean ineffective. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones." Lieutenant Kim Hyen adjusted his grip on the fighter's controls as his squadron approached the Vega system. Through his cockpit window, he could see the massive shadow that had been terrorizing the outer colonies for weeks. The Devourer was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it moved through space like a living nightmare. Its dark surface seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars, making it look like a hole cut out of reality itself. "Dragon Squadron, this is Control," came the voice from the human carrier. "You are cleared to engage. Remember, kinetic rounds, only no energy weapons." "Copy that, Control," Kim replied, checking his ammunition counter. His fighter carried old-fashioned projectile weapons, mass drivers that fired solid tungsten slugs at incredible speeds. Behind him, the Galactic Council fleet hung back at a safe distance. They had tried attacking this creature 3 times already. Each assault had only made it bigger and angrier. "All right, dragons," Kim announced to his squadron. "Let's show this thing what Earthborn fighters can do. Attack pattern Delta, hit it from multiple angles." The 12 human fighters spread out and dove toward the creature. Kim could feel his heart pounding as they got closer. The thing was so massive that flying near it felt like approaching a black mountain floating in space. "Firing," he announced, squeezing the trigger. The tungsten rounds streaked through space, tiny silver bullets racing toward the giant creature. Kim held his breath, expecting them to bounce off harmlessly like every other attack had done. Instead, something incredible happened. The projectiles punched straight through the creature's biometal hide with satisfying thuds. For the first time since the crisis began, the Devourer actually reacted to being hit. It writhed and twisted, letting out a sound that somehow traveled through space, a deep, angry roar that made Kim's teeth ache. More importantly, strange liquid began leaking from the holes his squadron had punched in its surface. "Control, are you seeing this?" Kim called out excitedly. "The target is bleeding." The golden ichor drifted through space like luminous clouds. The massive creature, which had seemed unstoppable and immortal just minutes before, was suddenly retreating, pulling back from the human fighters. "Target is withdrawing," Kim reported, hardly believing his own words. "Repeat, the Devourer is retreating." For the first time in months, the galaxy had hope. These creatures weren't invincible gods, they were just very tough animals. "These things bleed like everything else," Kim said with satisfaction. Admiral Choi Soo-jin stood in the war room aboard the UES Vanguard, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked where devourers had been spotted, and the pattern was clear. They were moving in a straight line toward the galactic center, consuming everything in their path. "Admiral," said her tactical officer, Lieutenant Bae Ji-won, "the Council is requesting that we set up defensive positions around their core worlds. They want us to make our stand at Alpha Centauri." Choi shook her head, studying the enemy's movement patterns. "No, that's thinking like prey." The other officers in the room looked confused. Captain Nam Seoshin from the Engineering Corps stepped forward. "Ma'am, I don't understand. If we don't defend the populated systems—" "We're not defending," Choi interrupted, her eyes still fixed on the display. "We're hunting." She traced the Devourer's path with her finger, extending their route forward. "Look at their trajectory. They're not randomly destroying things. They're following the densest concentration of inhabited worlds. They're heading straight for the inner systems, which means they'll pass right through Sol System," realized Lieutenant Bae. "Exactly." Choi smiled grimly. "We're going to help them find their way home." She called up Earth on the main display, the blue and white marble that had forged humanity into what they were. "Gentlemen, what do you see when you look at our homeworld?" "A beautiful planet," ventured Captain Nem. "I see the most dangerous place in the galaxy," Choi replied. "Violent storms that can sink ships, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that block out the sun, oceans full of creatures that hunt in packs." She gestured to the tactical display again. "We've been fighting these things in open space, where they have every advantage. But what if we brought them somewhere that levels the playing field?" The room fell silent as her plan became clear. "We're going to lead them to Earth," she announced. "Not to defend our world, to weaponize it." Lieutenant Bae looked shocked. "Admiral, that's incredibly risky. If the plan fails, then Earth dies defending the galaxy, just like it's been preparing us to do our whole lives." Choi's voice was steady and confident. "But it won't fail. These creatures have never faced a real Deathworld before." She looked around the room at her officers. "Earth will teach them what happens when you threaten something that's been fighting for survival since the day it was born." Captain Yoon Taiho was reviewing battle plans when his communications officer called out urgently from across the bridge. "Sir, we're getting transmission requests from ships on the outer rim. The signatures are ... unusual. Put them through," Yoon ordered, curious about who else might be responding to the crisis. The main screen flickered to life, showing two very different alien faces. The first was reptilian, with scarred hide and glowing yellow eyes that spoke of countless battles. Survived. The second looked like living crystal, its faceted surface reflecting light in strange patterns. "Human commander," growled the reptilian in heavily accented Standard Galactic. "I am War Chief Krextile of the Saurian Dominion. We received your galaxy's distress call." The crystalline being's voice rang like wind chimes. "And I am Facet Commander Jillax of the Shardling Collective. We come from the radiation fields of Kepler 442. Yoon felt a smile creep across his face. He recognized something in their eyes, the same hard edge that every human carried. The look of someone who had fought for every breath they'd ever taken. "Welcome to the war," he said simply. "We know of humans," continued Krextel, his scarred snout twisting into what might have been a grin. "Your species from the wet Deathworld. We are from a dry Deathworld. Endless deserts, where the ground burns during the day and freezes at night. Jilax's crystalline form pulsed with inner light. Our world bathes in radiation that would kill most organic life in minutes. We learned to absorb it, store it, weaponize it. The council species fear us, Krextel added, with obvious satisfaction. They call our worlds quarantine zones and pretend we don't exist. Until now, Yoon observed. Yes, until now. The Saurian's eyes gleamed. Finally, species who understand that survival means becoming the monster. Yoon looked at the tactical displays showing the 3 Deathworld fleets converging. Humans with their kinetic weapons and survival instincts. Saurians with heat-resistant troops and plasma-proof armor. Shardlings who could absorb radiation and turn it into weapons. The Council spent centuries avoiding us, he said, calling us too dangerous to contact. Their loss, rumbled Krextel. We who crawl from hell know how to drag our enemies back down with us. Jilax's faceted form brightened. These devourers feed on energy. Perfect. We have learned to digest much worse. The 3 commanders shared a moment of understanding that needed no words. While the civilized galaxy panicked, the children of impossible worlds were finally coming home to war. Major Kong Yeji stood in Luna Base's observation deck, watching the darkness between the stars. For 3 months, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Every ship, every station, every piece of military hardware in the solar system was ready. Major long-range sensors are picking up the main force, reported Sergeant O'Minsiok from the tactical station. 12 devourers, approaching from the Kuiper Belt. Yeji nodded calmly, though her heart was racing. Through the reinforced windows, she could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel, peaceful, beautiful, and completely deceptive. Signal all stations, she ordered. Operation Deathworld is a go. The devourers moved through space like living shadows, each one the size of a small moon. They had consumed dozens of star systems on their way here, growing larger and more confident with each victory. To them, Sol System probably looked like just another easy meal. They had no idea they were flying into the most elaborate trap in galactic history. First phase initiated, announced the communications officer. Solar platforms are destabilizing the sun's magnetic field. On the screens, Yeji watched as massive solar flares began erupting from the sun's surface, not random bursts, but carefully timed explosions that sent waves of superheated plasma racing toward the incoming devourers. Jupiter's magnetosphere is spinning up, came another report. Particle accelerator ready. Humanity had spent months turning their gas giant into a massive weapon. Jupiter's powerful magnetic field had been modified to accelerate chunks of metal to nearly the speed of light, creating a planetary-scale railgun. The devourers seemed confused as the solar flares reached them. These weren't energy weapons they could absorb. This was raw stellar matter, physical plasma moving at incredible speeds. Several creatures writhed as the superheated gas burned through their biometal hide. Mars defense grid is online. Asteroid belt miners have armed their excavation charges. Yeji smiled grimly. Humanity had weaponized everything. Mining equipment, weather satellites, even their own sun. The entire solar system had become one coordinated killing machine. Moon launch platforms are ready. Major fire, she whispered. Luna Base shuddered as massive kinetic launchers buried deep in the moon's surface opened up. Tungsten rods the size of telephone poles shot toward the devourers at devastating speed. Welcome to our neighborhood, Yeji said quietly, watching the ancient predators discover what it meant to threaten a species that had learned warfare from their own Deathworld. The battle for Sol System had begun. Fleet Admiral Han Jinwoo floated in the observation bay of the UES Indomitable, looking out at a sight that would be remembered for thousands of years. Scattered across the outer edges of the solar system were the massive corpses of 12 devourers, their dark bodies now cold and lifeless. Final damage reports are coming in, Admiral, said his aide, Commander Lee Soyin. We lost 18 ships and about 300 personnel. The Saurians lost to cruisers, and the Shardlings had some hull damage from radiation exposure. Han nodded solemnly. Every loss was a tragedy, but considering they had just saved the entire galaxy, the price seemed almost impossibly small. What about the other devourers? The scouts that were attacking the rim worlds? They're retreating, Lee replied with satisfaction. Once word spread that the main force was destroyed, the surviving creatures just left, disappeared back into deep space. A priority transmission chimed through the ship's communication system. Han recognized the voice immediately. Ambassador Crix from the Galactic Council. Admiral Han, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to formally thank humanity and your Deathworld allies. Your species has saved us all. Just doing our job, Ambassador. There's more, Crix continued, and Han could hear excitement in his voice. The Council has voted unanimously to redesignate Earth. You're no longer classified as a quarantined Deathworld. Han raised an eyebrow. Oh, what's our new classification? Fortress World, Protector of the Galaxy. We're also extending the same designation to the Saurian homeworld and the Shardling territories. Through the viewport, Han could see Earth spinning peacefully in the distance, its blue oceans and white clouds making it look like the most harmless place in the universe. It was hard to believe this gentle-looking planet had just orchestrated the destruction of an ancient galactic threat. Admiral, came another voice over the comm. Captain Park Minji, from the Defiant. The Council is asking if we'd be willing to set up a permanent defense fleet. They want us to train their militaries in Deathworld combat techniques. Han almost laughed. 6 months ago, the galaxy had been too scared to even visit Earth. Now they wanted humans to teach them how to fight. Tell them we'll consider it, he replied, as he watched Earth's peaceful rotation. Han reflected on how quickly things had changed. Sometimes, he said quietly to Commander Lee, salvation can only come from those who learn to survive hell itself. The age of Deathworld protection had begun.